So the mantras 4 and 5 gives 3 analogies. The first analogy was of Vyadyutak, the lightning. Vyamimishat, blinking. Manaha, it's the mind. As I've mentioned, these analogies are given to a less developed student. They are given what is known as an adesha. Adesha means an order or a commandment given to students who lack the intellectual wisdom. They are given a line of thought. They are fed so that they're aided in their thinking processes, because they lack the ability to do self-reflection, self-introspection. So the top cadre of students are given what is known as a upadesha. Upadesha means an advice, just an indicator, a pointer, and leaves the student to explore the truth for himself or herself. Now, the first one we spoke about was like the lightning. The lightning symbolizes the flash of lightning, symbolizes the Atman. The lightning, when it strikes as if 100 suns were illumined at a time. It's so bright, but thereafter it plunges you back into the darkness. Now, the experience of the lightning is between your eyes and the sky, which is in the yonder. Symbolically, the Atman is between the two experiences. The Atman is between your two thoughts, between the subjective and the objective. So the lightning, which symbolizes the consciousness, the Atman is sandwiched between two thoughts. And Atman is best described by not describing. So I would not attempt to describe. The Atman, or the consciousness, is the silence that is sandwiched between the two thoughts. I'm only just quickly recapping what was explained last week. So the consciousness, the Atman, is the silence which is sandwiched between the two thoughts, between two matra. Don't call it mantra, matra. Matra and amatra. The amatra means silence. Matra means a sound, a thought. So what that disturbs your silence is the continuous flow of thoughts. Now, as I'm trying to explain, somebody is disturbing my flow of thought. Unnecessary thoughts come to me. So the best thing to do is run away from the world. Nobody comes and disturbs you. These people take it literally. You don't have to run away from the world for the world to disturb you. The world only disturbs you as long as you have an underlying demand, a desire, a vasana for the world. It is always reciprocated by what you have silently invited the world. If the world comes and disturbs you, is because you have sent out an invitation, and the invitation you send out to the world is through your own vasana, through your own desire, through your own sankalpa, your own thoughts. So when the world disturbs you is because of your own thoughts. Why the world disturbs you is because of your own thoughts. So when you naturally reduce the occurrence of thoughts, many people are trying to do it, undermining that the root cause of a thought. It's like I go into the garden and I keep chopping off the wild grass which keeps growing. I keep just trimming it. As many times I trim the grass, it continues to grow. It's a matter of give it another week or two, it'll grow. That's what everybody is trying to attempt, to subdue the thoughts, somehow quieten the thought, somehow push them under the carpet, as it were. But as long as you have not uprooted the thought will manifest. Shantima, are you following? There's a little confusion written all over actually. So I need to clarify that.
Guruji, when you say the world doesn't disturb when there is no thought, right? But isn't that contradicting with the you get what you deserve? Even though I'm, sincerely, or embarking, putting effort, but still disturbing. But isn't that go to the law saying, you get what you deserve, not desire? So still the world, that's why it's disturbing. Can I put it in that way?
I'm actually trying to understand where you're coming from. Could you come again, please?
No, I feel it's contradicting. When you entertain the thought, then this the world is disturbing you, right? But the other hand, we also saying you get what you deserve, not the desire, even though I'm not entertaining that kind of thought.
Okay, now let's go one by one. Okay, now when we say you entertain the thoughts, the world disturbs you, the world presents itself to you, the world creates an environment for you. What are we trying to establish there? What we are trying to establish there is that there is this principle of demand and supply. All right. The desire creates an environment, gives you an opportunity. It takes you into that particular field of experience. You have a desire to watch a tennis match. you would go to a tennis stadium to watch a tennis match. Now, you do not have a desire to watch a tennis match. Would you be in an environment to fructify that desire? No, there is no desire at all. There is no calling from within me. There is no environment that will be provided because there is no calling from within. There is no demand and supply. Okay. Now, second thing you say, you get what you deserve, not what you desire. Now, when we say that, going with the same example of tennis, let's say you have a desire to watch one of the, I don't know whether we can say that, they call it the mother of all Grand Slams, which is the All England Open. And you want to watch that particular, is it, what do you call it, what Open is it? Wimbledon. You want to watch the Wimbledon. Now, would you be sitting next to the royalty in the royal box and watch the Wimbledon in the main court, the center court? What would determine that? You have a desire to watch tennis. You may be able to experience it because you have a desire, but would you be able to sit in a royal box in the center court and watch the finals? What determines that? Whether you deserve it. I'm not putting you less or more. I'm only trying to give an example. If I don't deserve to be sitting with the royals, I will not be there. Where would I be? Oh, I only got an ordinary seat. Not in the center court, I couldn't get, but I only got in the court 1. So I couldn't get into it because it takes a lot to get into that. So the desire only draws you to the environment. What you deserve thereafter is your own karma phala. You have paid the price in life.
Okay.
So I don't see any contradiction here. They're two independent points. One talks of demand and supply. Means supply in the sense it creates an environment for you. It doesn't necessarily mean it fulfills the desire. That's where the confusion comes from.
Yeah.
When we say demand and just because demand and supply doesn't mean it guarantees your object of fulfillment.
Okay.
Isn't it? It creates an environment for you. But what you get thereafter depends on whether you actually deserve it. Just because you desire it doesn't mean you can get what you want. It gives you a conduciveness. Are you able to understand the subtle difference here?
Yeah. Yes.
The test is not convincing enough. That's why I'm still.
I need to ponder over, Guruji.
Please. Yeah. Okay, but there is no contradiction. Just because you have a desire doesn't mean you get the object. Desire only creates a conducive environment. That's about all.
Okay.
If you don't have a desire, you don't even have the environment. You don't have that feel. Okay.
Thanks, Guruji.
Right. Yes. Redigar, are you following the thought flow?
Pranam, Guruji. Yes. In continuation with Shantima's query, and thought brings disturbance. When we talk about a disturbance, it could be a good. Can we distinguish it's a good or bad disturbance? Like you got a thought of donating, or you got a thought of doing something good. Can we call that as a disturbance?
Yes, absolutely. Any thought,
Okay.
if it comes and disturbs your mental silence, silence is measured with absence of thoughts. That's the reason they say the spiritual path has got nothing to do with the punya or apunya. Punya is when you get through meritorious deeds. Apunya is when you do selfish deeds. The spiritual path has got nothing to do with the good or bad you do.
Okay.
It has got to do with the selfless route. The selfless route is where there is no thought, desire backing the action. So in the conversation the other day, I was mentioning to you, remember the context? Lord Buddha wanted to realize, and he meditated with such intensity, with such fervor. The story goes, he failed to attain. So he gave up the very thought or idea of wanting to realize. And at that moment, he actually attained nirvana.
Yes.
So any thought, if you have not overpowered it, it becomes a disease. So we must understand a thought crops from a vasana. You understand the chronology, isn't it?
Yes,
There's a vasana that comes from the vasana comes a thought. Now, a thought comes from a vasana, and vasana is best understood in the context as ignorance of the self, sir. Thought comes from a vasana, and vasana is ignorance of yourself. So to the extent you are not realized yourself, to that extent the vasanas keep producing thoughts and desires which bind you to the world. So I'm also trying to do little good to you, to everyone, wanting to serve this knowledge. But believe me, if there is a desire backing it, it could be one of the most frustrating act to do. It's the most frustrating state to be in. Because I would have a desire to reach this knowledge out to the maximum number of people, to as many people as I can. And if there are no takers, what would it happen?
You get disappointed and you feel, of course, whatever your desires getting distracted.
It produces a lot of emotional unrest, isn't it?
Right.
So is it good to have a good thought?
But okay, Guruji, I do get an point, but is it possible to live a thoughtless life?
I'm trying to tell you right now that I am talking to you and there's no desire backing this act.
Okay.
It will be very difficult for you to be convinced. Not that I'm trying to convince you, but I'm only trying to tell you this very action is a selfless action. So there is no direct desire to teach, nor is there desire not to teach, but yet I'm teaching because it's my dharma, duty. Not long ago, we had wound up the classes we used to have on Wednesdays, isn't it? We did the Atmabodha text. Now, when the class wound up, not for a second was there a thought to continue. Not a second there was a thought to continue or do something to maintain a continuity. In the Shastra, in the Gita, they say a spiritual man has this quality known as Sarva Arambha Parityagi. Please take a note of it. Sarva, the 3 words, Sarva, Arambha, Parityagi. Sarva is all. Arambha,
starting.
Undertaking. Parityagi is relinquishing. So he says one of the qualities of a spiritual person is he renounces all undertakings. Misunderstood, highly misunderstood. Renouncing all undertaking doesn't mean you don't undertake anything, please. It means you should not start anything. No. There is no desire in any undertaking. So this is where you need to appreciate there is a realm of action known as selfless actions, where there is no obvious thought or desire backing it, but yet the act is done because it is your duty that takes you to the goal. The ultimate desire is self-realization. So selfless actions are done when you do it as your pure bounden duty. So you do it irrespective of your interest or participation or wanting to do it, but yet it has to be done. It is done wholeheartedly, not out of grudge and complaint. You do it wholeheartedly, so that when you do such actions don't incur any stain. You don't incur any sin because there is no impression of a thought backing that act. There is no punya or apunya. So what you get is the selfless act, which is to take to a path of self-realization. Contrary to this, how about other actions? Are you performing every action as your dharma or duty? Now, what spoils this performance of dharma or duty or selfless action is your preference of your like or a dislike. It is your own preferential likes and dislikes that comes and dislodges you from performing actions which is your dharma, duty. Sometimes an invitation comes to you and you may like to do it, you may not like to acknowledge it, but sometimes you say, I have an inward obligation to do it. It's not whether I like to do it or not. I think I have to acknowledge that invitation. I'm obliged to do it. So there is another path, a route you take. So the quality you got to practice is sarva arambha parityagi. So there is no thought or a desire to it. And if you are able to bring in that spirit of renouncing that undertaking while you're undertaken, there's so many things that will be undertaken, but there is no sankalpa, there is no desire to make it happen. Yet so many things are happening.
Yes, Guruji. Got it.
So the action becomes pure when you take the thought out of that equation. So what spoils it all is the thought for sankalpa. Then you may say, what do I do? Do what your obligation is. Let your intellect determine the course of action. The moment you say thought, it is the mind. The moment you say desire, it's the mind. The moment you say likes and dislikes, it's the mind. Take that out of the equation and just do what your intellect tells you to do every minute, every moment to moment. Then you don't acquire any stain. You're pure. Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Guruji.
Right. Gayatri Ma?
Yes. Guruji, when we say the silence between two thoughts, that means it is a place of thoughtlessness. But even during that time, is it not that the intellect is observing whether we are having thought or not? That itself becomes a thought. So what is that state beyond thoughtlessness is something difficult to perceive.
Now, let me understand your question. A question you're asking is, we say that there is a silence between
Two thoughts.
two thoughts. And then you are saying,
that thoughtlessness also, there is an intellect which is observing whether we are in thoughtlessness or what. If there is no time that there is no thoughtlessness, at least presently. So what is that state like?
so what you are saying is the fact that there is that state of relative thoughtlessness.
Yes.
Okay, relative thoughtlessness. Even that state of thoughtlessness is registered because there is some other factor which is actually differentiating between thought and thoughtlessness.
Yes, correct.
And what is it that's observing, which is the intellect?
Yes.
Therefore, the question is
that even that itself is a thought. No, intellect is observing it. So that itself is a thought.
how do you say that?
Because the intellect is observing the mind. So it is nothing beyond the thought. It is not a silence because there is an intellect which is observing it.
Ma, extending the same argument, when you go through deep sleep, when you come out of deep sleep, how do you know that you had a dreamless sleep?
When I wake up.
Correct. When you wake up only, you come to know that you had a sound sleep. Now, question is, how do you know? Because deep sleep state is said to be a state of nothingness.
Yes.
If there was nothingness and emptiness in that state, how do you know that you had a sound sleep, thoughtless sleep, deep sleep? How do you know? You know, isn't it? You very well know when you had disturbed sleep, and you very well know that you had a sound sleep.
Yes.
Question is, how do you know? The answer is the same what you are saying, Ma. There is the presence of the intellect. A ray of intellect is there in deep sleep that actually communicates to the waker when you wake up that you had a sound sleep, a thoughtless sleep, a sleep of nothingness. So what I'm going to tell is, in a relative sense, there is this temporary state of thoughtlessness. That state of thoughtlessness is only a relative sense. The absolute state of thoughtlessness is upon self-realization. Even in a relative sense of deep sleep, there is this intellect present. So I don't think you were referring to deep sleep. You weren't, isn't it? So you are talking of a certain mental states where in the waking state, your mind is relatively calm. In contrast to a state of mind where your mind is excited or disturbed, there is a contrast. The question is, you're saying, what is it that observes that silence? Is it there not the presence of the intellect, which is also a thought? Yes, it is, all in relative sense. But it is silence compared to the presence of the disturbance of the mind, which is a thought. See, the presence of the rational aspect doesn't cloud the self. Please understand that. So the difference between the thought of the mind and the thought of the intellect, what role does it play? I hope you all are following the discussion. When the thought of the mind comes, it clouds the self. When the thought of the intellect comes, it doesn't cloud the self. When the intellect is there, when the rational aspect of when the thought becomes rational, it doesn't cloud the self. That's all I'm saying. So when you have a rational thought, which is intellect, your mind is calm. So there is a far greater silence when the thoughts become rational. Vis-a-vis, when the same thoughts become irrational, it disturbs your mind. So irrational thoughts create mental disturbance. Rational thoughts create silence. It is safe to conclude that way. Could you repeat that last conclusion, Ma?
Rational thoughts creates disturbances. Rational thoughts creates silence. Irrational thoughts creates lot of disturbances in the mind.
For a moment, there was a lot of disturbance in my mind when you said that. Ayo, what is it you're saying? Huh?
No, basically, I was thinking of that deep silence only, Guruji, the deep sleep, So when I make that self-realization, probably I will not ask this question.
No, you will not be there to ask only, so don't worry. Because you don't want to waste your time with me. You will be somewhere else. But even in deep sleep, there is intellect. So please understand that. That's why I brought in that analogy or connection to tell you there is that it's all still relative. Okay. All right, ma.
Okay.
So irrational thoughts create mental disturbance. Rational thoughts create silence. It doesn't cloud the self. Okay. Right. Yes, Hariji, you can't keep raising your hands twice, Hariji. You already raised your hand. Two times not allowed.
Hariom.
Hariom, sir.
Guruji, when we are talking about intellect, in the self-realization is transcending the body, mind, and intellect. When we are talking about intellect, we are still in the terrestrial world. Once we cross the terrestrial and enter into the transcendental, then the body, mind, and intellect is dropped. Then there is no thought whether it is rational or irrational. Is my thinking correct? Because there is no equipment, because they are all material.
You're talking, the difference is you're talking of a state. That state is self-realization, which you and I am not there, so we don't understand.
Okay.
That you will never experience until you get to the state of realization. So what are we talking? So we just poetic talking, that is. When we talk of sadhana, it is talking about making our thoughts rational, and that happens till the last stage of meditation before you realize. So you are dealing with the mind and intellect right from the grossest spiritual state to the pinnacle of perfection. You are dealing with your mind. So what are you talking about transcending mind, intellect, and body? That is only a poetic description of that state of realization. Isn't it?
I get you.
So right throughout, you're dealing with the mind and the intellect and the body. So it comes as a discord, if you ask me, because that's only a state. This is all the time you're dealing. Sorry, are we not dealing with the thought even in meditation? Is the intellect not there in meditation? So that is the fact, isn't it? You have to deal with, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, right. Thank you, Ji. Tinky Ma is asking, what if the desire is not for an object, for an achievement, skill, to be a great singer or sportsman? Despite consistent efforts, one may not achieve results. The same thing. Whether it's a tangible goal or it may not be a tangible goal, but still what is tangible is your desire. What is tangible is your anxiety. What is tangible is your craving. So you got to still deal with that anxiety, your desire, the restlessness, your attachments, which is what that is holding you back to get to that object of desire. Object is not something always tangible. The object of desire could be anything in life, isn't it?
Guruji, this was in reference to, you said that a desire can take us to the environment where we fulfill the desire. But
Yeah.
the karma phala we get, once we get into that environment, will depend on the karma we have done. So if you take any great, whoever, a great achiever in any field, so that final achievement is because of the karma plus the effort or right time, right place, or if they did everything, but there is no karma, they won't get it. That's what I wanted to know. To what extent does your karma determine the karma phala? Here it is in
There's,
terms of achievement. They've not hurt anyone. They've not harmed anyone. There's no
there
impurity
is,
of mind.
there,
There's no papa punya.
ma, all papa punya, even any other factor that comes and disturbs you, the only thing that determines the karma phala, the karma phala is your own karma, nothing other than that. There is no other factor.
The desire was not to, for if you take Lata Mangeshkar or you take Sachin, when they started out, it was their vasana which drew them there. Maybe for somebody it was a financial need. But the pinnacles that they reached, they did not know they would get there. So that getting there, that achievement that they did get was a result of their karma.
What is your understanding of the word karma?
Karma is our action, obligatory action, doing unselfish.
Yes. So therefore, the vasana only takes you to the right field. Imagine Lata Mangeshkar playing cricket and Sachin Tendulkar taking to singing. It will be a disaster. Maybe they would surprise us even there. But I'm trying to tell, you have to go into the field which your dharma is.
That is understood. That is
yes,
understood.
Point one. Point one, vasanas only take you to the field.
Field.
How well you succeed depends on your karma, which is effort.
That is your shraddha, no? Consistency of effort, you always say. Yes. But that phala that you get is result of effort or karma. That's what I'm asking.
Now, what is karma and effort? Are they not the same? That's why I asked you, what is your understanding of karma?
Karma and Shraddha are different. Here we are talking of consistency of effort. No, are they not different?
Just little shanti. Slow down. You're using terms. I want to understand you. Firstly, you said karma is action. Are we right there?
Yes.
Now you're saying shraddha. Shraddha is trying to qualify that action as consistent action, consistent effort, granted. Yes. So what gives you the karma phala is action with shraddha. Correct? Right. Yes. Now, what is karma different to the effort? Are they not the same?
They are the same.
No. So since you are using another term, I'm trying to make it simple because it's repetitive. So what gives you karma phala is your karma with shraddha. That's all, nothing else. So if you have not got, going back to what Shantima said earlier, you get what you deserve, not what you desire. That is purely determined by your own karma. Have you put in your effort? If you have not put in the effort, you would not get the karma phala.
Karma phala.
So don't blame any factor other than your own self-effort. That's all. If a person deserves it, he has it. See, it's like when you go for a walk and you see a beautiful villa, and every time you pass by that, you keep envying. Oh, wow, look at that beautiful house. If you say that constantly, I would say that person deserves it, therefore he is there. If you also put in the effort, you also will be there similar or perhaps better than that. So why are you becoming envious at him? You don't need to be envious at others' progress. It's because of his effort, he deserves to be there. You put in effort, you will also be there wherever you want to be. So everything in life is vasana plus karma equals karma phala in that field. That's all. Okay, ma?
Yes, thank you, Guruji.
Yes. Arpit ji, all okay?
Hari Om Guruji.
Namaskar, sir. Hari Om.
Namaskar. Yeah, good. A couple of things I noted. I just wanted to confirm. So I wrote sadhana is about focusing on rational thought to the exclusion of irrational thought. So that's a fair statement, correct?
But
And
do you know why
Go ahead,
we
sorry.
said that? But do you know why we say that?
no, that was going to be my question. So I wrote it down. I'm not sure I quite understand the full impact of what I wrote down. To your point.
You want to clarify further on that?
I'm not sure I can. Again, I think I'm a little lost. I was trying to capture your thought, but I wasn't sure of the reason or motivation behind it, to your question. So that's why I brought it up. And it seems, as we're talking about these topics this evening, and to maybe the last 5 minutes with Tinkima, the conversation about swadharma and by inference paradharma, that a lot of this that we're talking about, the ability to get to this state of renunciation and selfless action and so forth and so on, I won't say becomes easier, but has less in terms of challenges if you're in a swadharma versus a paradharmic environment, right? So it feels like that has much to do with your ability to, or one's ability to maintain focus on rational thought as opposed to getting caught up in irrational thought. Because if you're not in a swadharmic environment, you're constantly agitated. There's constant noise because you're not focused on the things that you need to focus on. So that was one thing that was kind of spinning around, another plate, if you will, that was spinning as I was going through all this. But ultimately it comes back to, I didn't understand this thought about sadhana and why is it that way?
Right. See, the point I mentioned in conclusion to Gayatri Ma's question in conversation with her, I said rational thoughts produces peace, irrational thoughts produces agitation. Is that not what we referred to? Now, why we say the real sadhana is key, being as rational as possible, is what is the effect of a rational process to a thought vis-a-vis what's the effect of an irrational process to a thought. This is what you must examine. So if my thoughts are irrational, what does it do to a thought? See, when the thoughts are irrational in nature, the thoughts gets embedded deep into your personality and it starts becoming a desire. It becomes a vasana. But when the thoughts become rational, you are uprooting a thought from a vasana, you're uprooting it, and it becomes insignificant. It gets burnt off. There is no vasana, there's no desire at all. So what we are saying is any indiscriminate thought strengthens your desire. Any discriminate thought get rid of the desire. So when you start, any thought that comes in, if you start rationalizing it, what happens to it? It starts losing its strength. It starts losing its vitality. In a matter of time, if you give it enough through wisdom and intellect and rationality, it becomes insignificant. And that is a sadhana. But if you don't give that wisdom and intellect to a thought, it becomes licentious, it becomes indulgence, it keeps feeding the vasanas and desires, and that's contrary to what we want to attain, is that peace and silence, which is devoid of thoughts. So the question is, are you feeding the thoughts or are you starving your thoughts? So rational process starves the thoughts, irrational process feeds your thoughts. I'm only saying don't feed and create a monster out of them, starve them and let them get emaciated and depleted in energy and they drop away. And this process is when you are feeding your thoughts for the higher, the lower thoughts get dried up. That's always the proportion. You can't be with no thoughts. It's only question is, where are your thoughts? So when your thoughts are on the higher, the lower thoughts gets, they don't have the enough strength or stamina to hold on. So they drop off. And that is the rationale behind what the conclusion was.
So thank you for that, Guruji. Just reinforcing that. I still have the question of, is it, again, I hesitate using the word easier, but this, if you're in your field, it seems like it would be with less obstacles, because your action is driven more by sort of this natural, or it's not like you have to go hunting for it and create all this energy. It comes more naturally, right? It doesn't create a lot of excess noise, thoughts, desires, because you're so focused on this one area. I guess my question is, and maybe it's not applicable to this situation, but it seems like if you're in a swadharmic environment, you would entertain fewer thoughts because your focus is narrow on that field of action.
Not necessarily a guarantee, not a guarantee, not a solution for your spiritual evolution. Just because you're in the swadharmic field doesn't mean you evolve, not naturally so. But that's the first step, the first choice you got to make is to choose the right field. Having chosen the right field, you must operate in the right field. So if I have to go to the choice destination, I must choose the right route. I must take the right exit on the right expressway. That doesn't guarantee I reach my destination, does it? I need to drive safely every minute until I reach my destination, isn't it? Yeah. It's not taking the right exit. It is to drive safely right throughout. So it's not just being in the right field, which is of your nature, is how you operate in the field. So what we are talking is how you operate. Obviously, you have to be in the, I may drive safely, but oops, I've taken the wrong exit. So I'm actually going in the opposite direction, but I've driven very safely. Oh, I've been very alert every minute. 3 hours I've driven, but where have I reached? Other side of the country, not this side. Yeah, I used to be in this dilemma in the beginning because, whenever I used to go to a particular destination, there used to be as a fork. I either take left or right, and I remember making a wrong choice. The left would take me in the opposite direction, right would take me in the right direction. Imagine I've driven safely. Only after driving for 50 to 20 minutes, man, where is this? All the signposts are all in the opposite direction to me, And that's when you look for, oops, I need to take a U-turn. So we all perhaps need to take a U-turn in our lives and say, man, what am I seeking? What is my dharma? What is my nature? Be true to it. All right. So just being a
Thank you, Guruji.
Swadharma doesn't guarantee, sir. Doesn't guarantee. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Most welcome. Right. I think one more clarification. Samyama is asking the term sadhana and karma. Sadhana is a broad spectrum of your entire effort. There's broad field of activity. Your spiritual journey is called sadhana. Karma is the action aspect. When you perform action, even see, action again is not necessarily physical only. Action could be emotional, intellectual. Every aspect is considered as action. So when you perform karma, then there is the fruits of action, which is karma phala. So karma and karma phala, action and fruit of action are often used in a same language. But sadhana is the broader picture, the whole spiritual activity, the efforts at large is called sadhana. So sadhana is a broader perspective. Karma is used in the context of karma phala as a direct cause and effect. All right, I hope that clarifies now. Okay, so coming back to the Upanishad, the first he said is the lightning. The second analogy he gives is that which is like the blinking of eyes. Now, what's the interpretation here? What are we trying to draw out of it? See, in the first analogy, when we talk of lightning, the person who experiences lightning is always plunged in darkness. That is compared to a state of a mortal person, a state of a layman. Blinking is related to the experience of an enlightened person. So it's with reference to what you must understand. Lightning is with reference to a lay person, a person who is ignorant, and the blinking is in relation to an enlightened person. Now, for example, while you're blinking, like I don't even know, I don't even perform it, but it just happens as an involuntary action. I keep blinking. I don't know how many number of times I've blinked as I am seeing you all, nor are you all aware. Now, whenever you are blinking, when you close your eyes, you shut your eyes for that few milliseconds, the world actually disappears. When you close and when you open again, the world appears, isn't it? So the world disappears and appears, disappear and appears. And it happening, how frequently it's happening? Every few milliseconds. But yet, do you lose the vision of the object or that which you're perceiving? It's not that the world is cut off, is it? It isn't. There you maintain a constant vision of the world. So the world remains constant. Whatever you're perceiving, for now, I'm perceiving you all. As I'm blinking, the world is constant throughout the process of my blinking. Now, what is the comparison of this? Vasantama, what is the comparison? But blinking or winking? Blinking, dane?
Blinking, that is very sure.
Very sure, blinking. So when you are blinking, what's happening? You are having constant vision of the world. Correct, isn't it? Now, this compares to an enlightened person. What is the comparison? So what the enlightened person, when he transacts the world, when an enlightened person transacts the world, he may be going through the various actions. He goes through various perceptions. He experiences various emotions. He dabbles with various thoughts. Okay, actions, perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. So these other various experiences he goes through. While he is going through various experiences,
His thoughts are always on the self.
his vision of the self is not distorted. His attunement to the self is ever constant. His cognition of the self, his vision of the truth is ever present. Just like as I'm talking to you, my vision of you all is constant. It's not that there is a break in my perception of the world, which is you all now. Similarly, he says this man has his vision of the self throughout. So the blinking is compared to
The actions.
the various actions. Correct. Just like you and I keep a constant vision of the world, he maintains his vision of the self through the various actions he performs. So every time you blink, you could be reminded of the self. His question is whether you are conscious of it. Are you conscious of your breathing? We're not conscious. The moment you make it conscious, it becomes sadhana. Soumyama. Just now you asked, what is sadhana? I am breathing throughout involuntarily, even in my deepest of state of sleeps, I'm breathing. If I don't, I am dead. But that is no sadhana. There is no life in it. I'm alive, but there's no life. But what gives life and vitality is, what gives life and vitality, Vasantama?
Becoming aware of that breathing.
When you become conscious, that becomes pranayama, isn't it? So when you consciously breathe, that gives vitality and strength, isn't it? That is sadhana. When you do it unknowingly, unconsciously, ignorantly, it is no sadhana. So I may be blinking, but if every time I blink, if I'm conscious of that exercise, it's too much to say, to ask for, man, every time I blink, I must think of the self. A little too much, but I'm only trying to tell, just an analogy, please don't take it literally.
Guruji, maybe in a relative level, it is like being aware of the self everywhere.
Every experience, every time, yes, to be conscious of it every way. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Guruji.
Right. Yes. And then lastly, he says the third analogy, he compares it. That is as the mind which constantly entertains thoughts, athadhyatmam yadetad gacchati vacha mano naina chaitadupasmaratya bhishmago sankalpaha. He says, now as regards oneself, that is as the mind which constantly entertains thoughts, so does it to this. The third analogy is he compares it to the mind. The mind constantly revels in time and space. That's where your mind is all the time. Sushmama, If I were to ask you to entertain thought of your son, let's say if your son or your relative is in US, and I know you are in India and Delhi. If I were to tell you to entertain a thought of your son, how long does it take?
A split second.
It takes the mind a split second to go all the way from New Delhi to other part of the world, somewhere in US. A split second.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long does it take for you to think of the Atman, the self?
I really don't know, Guruji.
It should ideally take the same split second, isn't it?
It should, but right now I don't think I'm at that stage.
None of us at that state. None of us. But look at the conviction with which he says, as long does it take for the mind to alight on any object, it takes that long for it to go to this, he says. So you can gain the consciousness as easily as your mind entertains thoughts, provided we have done enough tapas and sadhana, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So you've been following the thought flow, Ma?
Pardon?
Have you been following the thought flow so far?
I have, Guruji, but I'm not still very clear, to be honest.
Neither am I. So we both are in the same boat. So don't worry, you're not alone. Any particular aspect that needs to be clarified?
So basically, I feel like you had given an example that if we chant Om, and that in between that the two Oms, that is the silence, supposedly. So I was just trying that out, but but I don't think I can really say that I don't have any thought. I'm thinking, am I where is the silence or not the silence? So maybe I'm too immature for that as yet.
See, what you are, there are two things here. One is the physical sound and the physical silence. Other is the mental chant and the mental silence.
Yes.
Obviously, when I chant aloud, Om, and there's a silence, and again I chant the mantra Om, it's the physicality of it. It's the matra and the amatra that you create because of sound and silence. But ultimately, the chant is a mental chant. Ultimately, the silence is a mental silence. It's not physically being silent. So when you are physically elongating the silence between the two chants, the challenge you are experiencing is the mind is not silent.
Yeah.
And that is where one has to make sure that the mind naturally becomes calm and composed.
So what is the process? What is the process that the mind should become calm? And because I'm trying that there should be no thought in that pause. So I don't know what the process is, that there should not be any thought. Maybe because we are still very worldly, or
see, that is the effect or culmination of the amount of sadhana or tapas one does. So when the mind is relatively free from the worldly thoughts and desires, proportionately your mind is calm. If my mind is infested with worldly thoughts and desires, to that extent my mind is disturbed. And that reflects when I'm trying to keep the mind calm in meditation. So there is no direct, there is no quick fix solution to, I want to actually quieten the mind in the meditative state. There is no direct quick fix solution to that. It is what is the general mental health that determines what thoughts crop up, if at all any thought crops up, and how frequent are the thoughts, how stable or how restless is the mind. All of that is a direct reflection of how healthy the mind is, which is a direct reflection of your spiritual state. However, whenever you are in meditation and you are trying to calm the mind, if any thought comes, and if you are alert of the thought that has cropped up, be very quick to snap the thought. Don't entertain the thought long enough that you get carried away with the thought. So the attempt would be, when the thought comes up and you become conscious, you say, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. You say, pass, pass. Tell yourself, I don't want to think of it. So this thought comes up, you just quiet it. Shh, Shanti, Shanti. I will not want to entertain you anymore. So just dismiss it away. Don't be hard at it. Don't be forceful. Just slowly dismiss it away. You may be plunged into that mental silence for a few seconds until another thought crops up. What do? Do the same process. Shanti, shh, Shanti, Shanti. Don't disturb me. Push it away. But you got to be alert to nip it as early as you can so that it passes away. But this is only a test to see how mature you are. So to that extent, you can sit in meditation. But real meditative state is you don't struggle with these many thoughts. Your mind is naturally very calm. But none of us are in that exalted state. So we don't have to be very critical at ourselves, or we don't have to punish ourselves for not being there. But it is just a very clear experience to know what our mental maturity is, what is our state. So when we sit in that meditation, we know what kind of thought comes, how many thought comes. We know whether the train is left the platform or whether is it in full speed. What is the UK? So when the train has left the platform, what is it that you understand from the analogy? The train has left the platform, vis-a-vis the train is at optimum speed.
Is whether the mind has maintained, is capable of maintaining some silence, or the thoughts are, are the thoughts rushing into the mind?
The thoughts are rushing like a train.
Yes.
So one after the other.
Yeah.
So many thoughts are coming. Is it happening like that, or is it just
Calm,
at a slow pace? The thoughts are happening.
Yes.
Okay. So where are you? At the railway station or somewhere in the high-speed zone?
Most of the time, high-speed zone, Guruji.
Yo.
And trying to
high-tech. All of you are high-tech. We know that. Huh?
We are in a very, very mature state of this thing, Guruji. We are struggling to slow the thoughts. Like,
put the brakes. That's all.
Yeah.
Slow down. Put the brakes on. Sometimes you may have to jam the brakes also.
True, Guruji.
Yeah. So we'll have to bring in a lot of, that's what I said to RPG, and even Gayatri Ma. Once your rational aspect of thoughts come in, the intellect comes in and start processing the thoughts which are unhealthy. That is a sadhana. If you do, the fruits we reap is your effort. Everything becomes very, very.
The brakes
auspicious.
can be applied. Yeah.
Thereafter, no need to apply brakes. Everything is very calm.
Yes.
I'm just quoting Setuji. Setuji, do you know the source of that verse? He keeps sharing me with some beautiful nuggets. I don't know how to chant it. Huh? The one you shared with me, anxiety burns one alive.
I didn't share.
You are my guru. I am confessing you are my guru. You say I am not your shishya. How can you say that? You are my guru. Please don't deny me as thy shishya.
But Guruji, one thing I want to share, in the class, we get least extraneous thoughts. In the class, that is, I feel like sitting in the class only instead of sadhana. This is sadhana for us.
A little longer I sit, I will become uncomfortable. So please be mindful of what will be my state after the class, if the class doesn't end. No, I can understand what you're saying. Right? You get so lost in it. Yes. Yeah. No, but Situji, I'm just referring to the one of the days you just shared with me. The title of that phrase, you should let me know the source of it. I'll share it back with you again. It says, anxiety burns one alive. The difference between chitta and chinta, Kamalji, I don't know whether you have come across anywhere. Kamalji, the difference between chitta and chinta is just a dot, in brackets bindu. While chitta, the fire burns dhate, one after death. Chinta, the anxiety, burns one even when alive, sajivam. Isn't that a beautiful way of describing the difference between chinta and chitta? Is just a innocuous dot. One, chitta is you're burnt when you're dead. Chinta is burning you when you're alive. So why should you have chinta? Chinta is unnecessary worry of thoughts. Where did you get this from, Setuji?
I'll check, Guruji. This is actually a forward by Mr. Kritivasan.
Right, correct. You said that.
Yeah. I will just check the source.
Right. The Sanskrit thing is chinta, chintayascha, chitayascha, bindhumatra visheshata, sajiva dahate chinta, nirjivam dahate chita. This is, I don't know where is the source of it, but it's very beautifully captures what undisciplined, if you don't manage your thoughts, what it creates for you. A veritable hell. RPG. Yes, sir, you want to clarify something?
I got so caught up in your explanation, I've forgotten what I was thinking.
No problem.
That's embarrassing.
No,
sorry.
Take your time.
So I think yes. So because the self is imperceptible, unknown to us at this stage, it seems like anytime you're even in the, not even in, say, the realm, but it's as if you're having a thought of the self, right? So it's not a tangible, as an enlightened person would have it, because they've merged, right? But it's a thought of the self, as you've explained it, and the Shastras explain it, and so forth. And so I'm just trying to, when you pitch it up and you have that moment where you blink and you think, you don't know the self, but you're only thinking of a thought of the self. Is that and you know, you described the concept of operating within your field, right? And being on that path. Is that a legitimate aspect of the path? Thinking and having a thought of the self? Or is that not the right way to approach this? Because we don't know the self, right?
RPG, my suggestion is too much thinking going on. Stop thinking. We are talking of uprooting a thought.
Yeah, but if that thought is a thought of the self, as compared to anything else you can focus on, is that a better realm to find oneself in than anything else, right? And maybe it's just like to yourself, you just stop thinking about it, just do your sadhana, do your swadharma, do your, you know, selfless action. Don't think about this thing. All that will come as a outcropping of this effort of your karma, right? Don't think about it, because otherwise you're just going to fall into this pit of anxiety and you know, because you hear it in class all the, well, when am I going to get there, and how do I get there, and so forth and so on.
See, the beauty of this whole holistic sadhana, which is karma, selfless service and sacrifice, devotion, bhakti, and jnanam. You must understand, jnanam, or this knowledge, is only 1/3 of the sadhana. So don't make it as if this is everything. It's like when you're construction, if you don't cure the construction after you've done the construction, that whole construction becomes very brittle. It doesn't have the strength, isn't it? So the knowledge will not have the foundation if you don't have the bhakti and karma. So that's why I say holistic sadhana, when you do, it starts crystallization where it brings about a clear detachment where you are not enamored by the world anymore. So the terrestrial loses its charm for you. And that's when you have taken off from the terrestrial and you have gone into the transcendental, the realm of transcendental. And that picturization of what that self is, it becomes so vivid, it becomes so clear. That very goal of realization is so very, very vivid, very, very powerful. You may not have the words to communicate to others, but that calling is very clear, that you're able to visualize what that is. But that is a subjective experience, a subjective inner acute perception you develop to it. And that doesn't come only with knowledge, please. It comes with the combination of all the three parts.
But in different proportion, right? It's not necessarily
Yes.
1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it's different. Got it.
Theoretically, I've said it's 1/3 because you got to give importance to the other two elements, which are very, very essential. Very essential.
Helpful, Guruji. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. GB Kiragaru.
Jai Gurudev.
Namaskar, sir. Jai Gurudev. Hari Om.
Chiti and Chinta.
Chappan, sir.
One time, once the fire comes, one time you just die. But the Chinta, what it is, the lifetime. Every second, every minute, you will be dying only in the life. That is because there is the Artha and Kama. These two are the thoughts, which it, the way you have to have Artha, you have to have Kama. Both you have to have. But are they with Dharma or without Dharma? That is where it changes. I have to have food. I have to have house. I have to have a minimum comforts. But there, the Lakshman Ray, where you are crossing, that means your thoughts flowing to that level where that Chinta comes. So it's, it's difficult to, the greed is such a thing which you will not able to, no peace, any second, only to achieve on that race, people go on. That's why Dharma, Artha, Kama. Any Artha, you have to, your consciousness says you are crossing the limit. You are not supposed to. Yours is yours. Not like, Rama is always, is one Patni. He never looks at all others as a sisters and mother. And where is Ravana looks everything I want. So including everything. That is where the attitude of the mind, which is the thought flow, it changes the either Chinta or the moksha.
Correct. Very true.
So
yes. Namaskar. Right, sir. Thank you. Yes, indeed. I thought it was a very beautiful way of saying Chinta should not become your Chitta. You're being burnt alive. Very beautiful. All right. So we will leave it at that. We'll come back. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.